You're standing at the rail of a boat at dusk, and something pale shifts just beneath the surface. Probably a fish. Probably nothing. But the real answer is far stranger. Sailors on opposite sides of the planet, who never met, never traded, and never read each other's stories, all came home describing the exact same creature. Half human, half fish. Watching them from the water. Greek sailors called them sirens. Mesopotamian carvings from thousands of years earlier show a targetus, a goddess with a fish tail. West African coastal traditions describe mamiwata, a spirit rising from the sea. Japanese fishing villages told of the ningyo. Scottish islanders swore by the selkie. These cultures had no contact with each other. No shared trade routes crossing every one of these regions. No borrowed manuscripts. And yet somehow, independently, they arrived at almost the same figure, over and over, on nearly every coastline on Earth. Why would that happen? The folklorist Stith Thompson spent decades cataloging exactly this kind of pattern. He built what's called the Motif-Index of folk literature, an enormous cross-referenced catalog of recurring story elements pulled from cultures across the entire globe. Half-human, half-animal beings, especially ones tied to water, show up again and again in his index, entirely independent of geography. Thompson's conclusion wasn't that one culture invented the myth and it spread. It was that certain story shapes keep getting reinvented, because something about human minds keeps landing on them. That raises the next question. Why this shape? Why a human torso and a fish tail, specifically, instead of some other hybrid? The cognitive anthropologist Pascal has a compelling answer. And it isn't really about the ocean at all. Boyer studies why certain supernatural concepts spread easily while others simply don't stick. His research found that the most memorable, most transmissible ideas are what he calls minimally counterintuitive. Not completely alien. Not totally ordinary either. Just one core violation layered onto something familiar. A person is familiar. A fish is familiar. Combine them, and you get something your brain finds instantly strange enough to remember, but not so strange it gets dismissed as nonsense. A talking rock, by comparison, barely survives being repeated twice. A half-human, half-fish creature survives for millennia, on every coastline, because it's built out of exactly the right amount of impossible. So the human mind has a bias toward inventing this shape. But minds alone don't explain why sailors specifically kept swearing they'd seen one with their own eyes. For that, you need something swimming in the actual water. And here's where the story gets almost embarrassingly ordinary. Manatees and dugongs, two closely related marine mammals, live in warm coastal shallows across the Caribbean, West Africa, and the Indo-Pacific, which happens to overlap almost perfectly with where these myths cluster most heavily. Seen from a distance in poor light, breaking the surface to breathe, a manatee has a rounded head, expressive small eyes, and a broad tail fluke that can look startlingly human-like from the wrong angle. Females even nurse their young by holding them against their chests with a flipper, a posture that, from 40 yards away on a rocking ship, can read as something disturbingly close to human. Christopher Columbus wrote about this directly in his ship's log in January of 1493, off the coast of what's now the Dominican Republic. He recorded seeing 3 mermaids rise out of the water. Then almost immediately he added his own correction. He noted they weren't nearly as beautiful as they're portrayed in paintings, and that their faces had a somewhat masculine look. Modern marine biologists are confident Columbus was describing manatees. The same animal sailors across multiple oceans had almost certainly been half-glimpsing for centuries before him. So here's the twist. This wasn't one myth that spread. It was 2 separate ingredients, present almost everywhere at once. A real, genuinely human-like marine mammal living along coastlines worldwide, giving sailors something ambiguous to actually see. And a universal feature of human cognition that reliably converts ambiguous, half-human shapes into a story worth telling and retelling. You didn't need cultural contact for the mermaid myth to spread globally. You needed the same animal and the same brain, showing up independently, again and again, wherever people lived near warm coastal water. Think about what that means for the shimmer you noticed at the rail earlier. Your brain didn't malfunction. It did exactly what human brains have always done near unclear shapes in water. Filled the gap with the most memorable, most human-like explanation available. using the same cognitive shortcut that built this myth in the first place. You are running the identical software that turned a manatee into a goddess. That's the real reason this legend never needed a single point of origin. It didn't spread from one storyteller to the next across oceans no one had crossed yet. It kept getting reinvented, on coastline after coastline, because the same real animal and the same predictable mind kept meeting each other in the same warm, shallow water, over and over, long before anyone wrote any of it down. You're standing at the rail of a boat at dusk, and something pale shifts just beneath the surface. And now you know exactly what you're looking at. Not a myth someone told you. A pattern your mind was always going to build, the moment something almost human looked back at you from the water.